Greetings again in the triune deity, whose we are and whom we serve. What a wonderful opportunity it is again to be joining with you here in another edition of the International Pentecostal Assembly Threshing Floor Helpline. And we are back with you, giving you so much good information to thresh your anxiety, of course, all the mental baggage that you have in terms of mental derangement. And we are going to thresh all of that this evening. And we thank God for the grace upon our country and upon our land. I think this is the first time that I'm doing the program since we've had our last elections. And we want to say over this platform, congratulations to the NDC and Deacon Mitchell led party for winning the election and for forming the government. Now he is the Honorable Prime Minister, and so we want to say congratulations to them, and also to thank our former Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell, for his service to the country. Of course, it's not done because he's still operating in the capacity of the opposition leader, and all of the other candidates. We thank God for the smooth and peaceful way in which the elections were done. And we thank God that our country can move on now as we work together as a people, because, of course, we have to continue the work of collaborating in different ways so that we can fulfill the great potential that God has given to us in the earth, where each of us as citizens must be able to do that. So again, we want to thank God for that process, and we look forward to what God is going to do to build and develop our dear precious tri-island state, as they say it in the reverse order: P.T. Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada. But nonetheless, we have a tri-island state that we have to take care of. So again, we invite you to join the live. Maybe you can share the link with a friend. Tell them to tune in to Hope 103.1 FM as we here on this Threshing Floor Helpline, giving you lots of good information here for your mental wellness and your balance. Today we have a very decorated man of God in the studio today with us, joining with us. He's from Barbados, the island of Barbados. And of course, his bio is so long we might take up half of the program to just introduce him. But he's a psychologist by profession. He has a doctorate in psychology, and he's a licensed psychologist and marriage counselor. So he has been here on the program a couple of weeks, a couple of sessions, the one before the last one we had. And of course, we had a little bit of twitches, but today we've hoped that we're getting him live and direct. Of course, he is a very experienced individual as well in so many areas in his lifetime, and we're just going to be gleaning from him and drawing from him this evening as he really helps us understand. We're looking at depression and how we cope and deal with that, because a lot of us are facing that. It's just not a local thing, but it's also an international thing. So Dr. Cummins, Dr. Anthony, a matter of fact, J.D.D. Cummins. And so, Dr. Anthony, welcome again to the Threshing Floor Helpline. We are very delighted to have you join us here this evening.
Good evening, every one of you. It's an honor to be on here with you today. It has reminded me of being here in Barbados and other places all the world. I feel at home. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
Yes, we're hearing you very, very clearly. How have you been, sir? How have you been? What's the climate like in Barbados?
Oh, we're doing well. The climate, psychologically, economically, health-wise, in every form is doing pretty good now. We're good. How are you doing?
I am doing good. I'm doing great by the grace of God, as He continues to shine upon me.
Amen. Good. I look forward to your broadcast. Since you asked me to come on the invitation, and then you had your election.
Yes,
My
sir.
God,
My
and I
God,
am
and I
so
am
honored
so
to know
honored to
that
know
you
that you
completed that
completed that
process.
process.
And I
And I
extend,
extend,
blessings to
blessings
the
to the
incumbent
incumbent
and
and
also further
also further
blessings to the
blessings to the
opposition at this
opposition at
point in
this point
time.
in time.
I wish all
I
you
wish
all
all you all
success there, your
success there,
prayer,
your
your
prayer, your
strength,
strength,
and may you
and
go
may
from
you go
strength
from
to
strength
strength.
to strength.
Certainly, certainly. And we want you to chime in now because we've had a recent kind of development. I'm not sure if it's recent, but it has been drawn to our attention by one of our interventionists here in Grenada relative to the whole rollout of the elections. And he was making the point that there are some loss and grief that is associated with elections, and not to the point that somebody has died, but in the capacity where persons might have done a lot of work in the campaignings. Yeah, for example, the incumbent party who have lost, and we might say, well, it's just an election, they lose, and that's it. But we realize that we have people that are affected psychologically as a result of dealing with that loss of the election. So maybe as a psychologist, I know you can add some light to what Dr. Niels Chaitan, that's the name of the gentleman, he always publish these articles, and this was written in one of his articles that he would have published. He was on the last program with it. But from your perspective, is that a reality?
Oh, yeah,
Oh yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
Why there may
Why there
not
may
be
not be
a
a
depression,
depression.
we must understand that there is a degree of loss and grief that would occur because sometimes depression is mixed up with grief and loss. But and those are components too of a greater dimension of depression. But we must appreciate, and I'm going to ask you kindly there in Grenada to be a little patient with Dr. Mitchell. He has lost. He has been an incumbent for a number of years. He have had a tremendous amount of power in his hands. For two uh, terms of two consecutive terms of landslides victory. So it is not easy to have lost an election. Nobody likes to lose, especially when you have been opting to win. And you were on the ground there, you saw the work that went in there. A lot of money have been spent and investments have been made. Definitely is going to be a little challenging for him. So you need to for your former uh, prime minister and understand where he's at. In the initial stages, you may hear some angry remarks. You may hear, some very aggressive statements being made. Again, that's all part of the process of what we call grief. If not managed well, if not treated well, then obviously you have to have some coping skills for grief and for loss. But definitely depression, if not treated well, these things can elevate into depression and that kind of thing. But at this stage, I do not think it would be any. I saw the swearing in of your both leaders, and therefore I am not thinking it is there. I think that he's ready to go again. Yes.
Certainly, certainly. But while we do not want to downplay, I mean, Dr. Keith might be a strong man. I mean, he might have the tenacity in the face of loss because he would have lost already before. But we're talking about grassroots people, people that I know of particularly that canvassed. I mean, they were walking, miles through different terrains, to different communities. They, organized groups. They did a lot of the groundwork. They attended all of the rallies. They were on the heights. And of course, we also have the dynamics of people who may have lost positions. If, for example, they had a particular role or particular job or occupation with the particular party that they associate with, now that they will not be in power, they feel that that role might be taken away from them. The economy might be compromised. So there's a lot of spin-off effect in terms of how this play out. So we're looking at the grassroots people. I remember recalling, asking, some of my people, and one of them say, somebody they experienced diarrhea for like a whole week. Some people had instant headaches. Some people couldn't come out. Some people couldn't eat. There's a lot of on the ground kind of effect that a lot of people don't think about, because we're thinking, okay, you lose, you win, and let's get on with the business. But a lot of people have also different kinds of effects. So let's speak into it so that we can help those who are dealing on those levels.
Yes, definitely, you're so correct, Bishop, because a lot of persons will be displaced. From time to time when governments change positions in power, we understand that there are some heads of departments which might be, relaxed. The occupation vocation may be relaxed for mine, and these are people that may very well have been looking, have greater plans at that level, where some people set 10, 15, 20-year goals, and the reality is, you did mention a class of persons there, or a group of people there, and those persons that have walked the length and breadth and knock on doors and that kind of thing, supporting, we call branch houses and that kind of thing. And definitely these people will be very angry and feel that sense of lost. And one of the things that we're going to look at a little later is how you can actually overcome these losses and depression, because we don't want to have a program such as this and don't look at solutions and how you can overcome this. But definitely, this is not to be taken lightly. Again, if not treated, this can elevate to a high level of depression, and you're going to learn a little later that what depression really looks like, so you begin to see it. Because honestly, if you're not careful, you end up in an extreme state of depression where you would need to have be treated with medication and that kind of thing. And you don't want to be in that group dimension of diagnosis and that kind of thing. So therefore, you want to be careful of that. So I always encourage persons, in any form of loss, give yourself a time to mourn. Give yourself a time to mourn, whether it is 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever. Give yourself that time. You owe it to yourself to spend that time with the loss, dealing with the loss, we dealing with the grief. But after that, whenever that 4 week, that time that you've given yourself kicks in, snap out of it, get out of it, and get back to working. And again, we're going to look at some coping mechanisms and how we can get that. But I know a lot of people that are very angry. In every election, there are persons who are angry, especially from that group of persons who were there hoping that a particular leader may have won the election because their life support, their maintenance level relies on them heavily. So this is a serious time, and I'm sure the mood in Grenada should not be one that is underestimated and that kind of thing. It's going to be a little, tight for a little while, but the climate definitely is going to get past it. You have to accept that this is what it is, and let's build on that. So we're going to look at shortly what depression looks like, so for sure how to maneuver. Bishop,
Definitely.
if I go ahead and do that.
Yeah, just before you do, I just want to tease you one more time on this issue, because in our culture we're not very what should I say, we're not very tolerable in terms of things like that. We're not, what was the word I'm looking for? We're not very sensitive to people that are suffering. Like children, we we pry upon people like that, and while I might be hurting very badly, somebody might just laugh at me and say, "Girl, just get on with your business, get over it," because we don't have the softness to understand, what people. You see what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? We just get on with it, Esther. Just wake up yourself and get on. But we not. We don't have that kind of sensitivity to say, what, I understand that this is going to be what you're going through. We don't do that. We like school children. We're very cruel as a society. So people don't even have the luxury to grieve. The grief.
Well, I was looking at some statistics before I came on to your program, and I recognized that Grenada does not have a very large depression rate. With 113,000 people population, uh, about I think it is about 11,000 persons, just about 4.7% of the population that you find that have a tendency to have, on average, depression traits and attacks and diagnosed with that depression. So when I saw that, on a general basis, because normally when you are on the ground, you tend to see what just what is before your eyes. You don't see the bigger picture. Whether you want to believe it or not, generally a community or an island would have just a small pockets of persons who are committed to crime and who's causing havoc in an entire nation with 113,000 people, or a bigger state like a country like America. So when you compare the statistics with on a general basis with other countries, Jamaica is Grenada is very well positioned. I mean, Barbados has approximately 288,000 persons living here, and our percentage is like 5.7% of persons who have, been on a yearly basis, who have attacks and so on, diagnosis with depression. So we have to appreciate that you're not doing too bad, but still, because you just had an event, that is where it would rise. You just came out of COVID. Well, I'm not sure if you're out, but they claim that you can relax some protocols and everything now, and it's not going to be headline news anymore. But you just came out of 2 years and a half of COVID-19 challenges. You've had some persons experience family loss in terms of deaths and so on because of that. You had hurricane and storms and floodings and that kind of thing. Now you've gone through a massive election, and I must say to you all that that's a lot. So I would expect that the statistics, obviously for 2022, which would come a little later down the end or further in the 2023, when you look back at it, you may very well see a major rise. So definitely, you want to be sure to be in there and to understand that, yeah, God is in there. God is in there with you. Because one of the things about scripture is that it says, cast all your cares upon him, cast all your anxieties, cast all your depressions upon him. And that is very, very important. He cares for us. And he also says in that scripture, don't be anxious, don't be depressed, don't be. The reason why that scripture can say to you, don't be, is because there's an expectancy. God expects you to be depressed. God expects you to be anxious. God understands he's dealing with human beings. So he understands. He said, don't be depressed or don't be anxious for anything. But with what? But with prayer and supplication, make your request known unto him. I think that's a powerful scripture, because sometimes you don't even know who to talk to. You don't know where to go. You don't have monies to get the necessary level of help that you need. And sometimes it might be best to talk with God. But again, we're going to look into that, because you still don't want to be isolating yourself when going through periods of depression. So you must know how to identify depression. Very good. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you. Folks, if you're just joining with us, we're chatting here in Studio 103.1 FM, IPA Threshing Flow Helpline with Dr. Anthony Cummins from the island of Barbados. He's joining us here as a decorated psychologist. Of course, we're getting from the experts, as they say in the local parlance, we get to listen to the science. So this is a man of the science of mental wellness and health as a psychologist in the cognitive dimension. And we would like you, to post your questions, or you can call in the studio, of course, to ask a question or to make a comment. We will encourage it in the program. So if you're joining with us now, you're coming home from work, you're just settling in, you can tune in via Facebook or the YouTube channel, or right here on the station. You can tune into your radio and listen while you're trying to get something to eat, because this is going to impact and change your life. As we say, it's going to thresh your anxiety. And we're talking about depression. So I'm going to go back to Dr. Anthony, and he's going to really share to us. But Dr. Anthony, we have a lot of stresses in our global atmosphere. So many things are, as you just mentioned, are upon our backs, as we in Grenada have faced, so many in the recent times. And so we want to look at some of the signs and the symptoms that we will look for, some of these things that we have to, begin to strengthen our resolve as we have to deal with them. And then we're going to go into some of the things that you will have on your heart to speak to us in terms of the solutions and the way in which our people can take this tool and incorporate it into their lives so that they can live full and meaningful lives. Or you can call in the WhatsApp number for those of you who are connected with us, 473-403-1031. That's the number to call, and we will entertain your call or your questions as we proceed in this evening's program. Dr. Anthony, back to you.
Okay, great. So we want to look at what depression looks like for those persons who may have been feeling strange in their bodies, feeling strange, having challenges in their cognitive, way of operations and activities and so on. And you really want to know what the depression really, really looks like. And I think that's important to us. Let me from the outset let you know, the good news is that depression can be treated. Depression can be treated. Let's begin there. Depression can be treated. You don't have to worry. It can be treated. The important thing is to be able to acknowledge it, is to be able to accept, is to be able to identify that it is so and start to stick to the necessary treatment that may have been prescribed or even suggested to you or even instructed for you to do, depending on the level or depth of your of depression. Now, what does depression looks like? You got to start looking at it from the perspective that is really something called a mood disorder. Okay, it is a mood disorder, and it causes what we will call a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. You get me? So I want you to listen to that carefully. A form of sadness and a loss of interest. So if we were to, I want you to listen to this. If we were to look at, holistically at maybe the election, as it were, would you say that the persons who have lost, or the party who have lost the elections, is experiencing a loss of interest? I don't think so. So you see the way it is important to understand what it is. Now you may have a set of persons now in Grenada who may say to themselves, look, and I want you to understand the spirit in which I'm speaking to this. They may say to themselves, look, that party has lost. I don't want anything to do with that party anymore, or I don't want anything to do with that relationship anymore. Or with, you have in some relationships, you have, if woman might have gotten her in her relationship and she says, look, I'm done with men. I don't want anything to do with men anymore. You have children that might say, I don't want anything to do with mommy anymore, that they have lost interest. And that's where you want to key in. That's what is going to decipher the difference between grief and depression on the outside. Okay. You also need to look at the fact that something like this can also be called a major depressive disorder or a clinical disorder. Now, when you have reached the stage of a clinical disorder, you know for sure that you need a further level of assistance for your coping skills and that kind of thing, maybe from a prescribed perspective, prescribed medication perspective. So this feeling that you have begins to affect, this order begins to affect the way you feel, the way you think, and the way you behave. And it can lead to what we call emotional and physical problems. So when persons are depressed, it is not only emotional, but it transcends, or it is transferred to the physical as well. So that's where you would find that a person who is depressed is not only feeling sad, or feeling as though, tired and that kind of thing. They are very tired. It transcends to the body, to the physical body. They lack that form of motivation and that kind of thing. So it must be understood that not that there's nothing to worry about. Understand it is treatable, and you can get coping mechanisms for it.
If I can
Yeah.
chime in here a little bit,
Yes.
just to qualify what you're saying, because you're talking about starting with the feelings or the mood,
Mhm.
right? And then you're speaking of the cognitive dimension of how that translates in your mind, and
Right.
then you're coming back to the mood. So where does it start at? Is it the mood? Is it the cognitive levels? Because there must be a perception of something that changes your mood. So where does it really start? Does it start from the external or the internal?
Okay. Depression always starts from the external in. They would later down we would learn that some percentage can be hereditary, but we're going to look at how it starts. And if you understand how the mind is made up and how the body is made up, you would notice that everything that happens in our body enters our body through the five senses. The feel, the touch, the smell, the hearing, that kind of thing. All five of those senses have to be in operation and come into agreement. So you get the bad feeling that you have came via maybe the media, whether it be social media, whether it's newspaper, whether it's the radio, that kind of thing. Somebody telling you something, so you saw something happen, you heard something happen, you felt something, something happen, you tasted and something happened. So it always comes through those external sources, and that's why it's important that persons learn how to guard their mental faculties and that kind of thing, and that's really what you bring in and what you import from the outside. Now, once you understand that, you will know that those sources always affect the way you think. They affect your thoughts, and your thoughts always affect your and impacts your feelings, and your feelings will impact your feelings slash emotions will impact your what? Your results.
Yes.
So that is important. So if you find that your behavior is a certain way, all you have to do is to walk backwards from your results to the what you are thinking and feeling, from what you're feeling to what you're thinking, and what you were listening to, what you were hearing, what you smell, that kind of stuff. And that's critical, right?
Yes, I want to come back in here a little bit because I know you want to get on with it, but
No.
this is very critical that we understand. We go in slow motion here because you're saying uh, go backwards to see where it starts, right? And I am thinking now, okay, it comes from the external, as you realize, from all of the stresses that are out there. But what is the critical filtering mechanism? Because then it tells me that there is a measure of control that can happen. Or are we saying there is no control? Because if it goes through the filter of the mind, whatever we see, we hear, we've touched, the five senses as you have delineated, okay? Now it goes through the mind as a filter, and then the mind will translate that to some measure of feelings or what have you, and then you behave in a certain way, and of course that have implications. So in our mind, in the Christian circles, and people are going out there, what is the filtering mechanism, or how can we filter, or is there a filtering mechanism that can deal with this as it's going through the cognitive to come out to the behavior?
Right. Well, the filter mechanism always comes through the management of the corporate skills and so on and the solutions. However, the where you, as I said earlier, you have to learn how to guard your mind. Now, for instance, if an individual, when you an average individual obviously does not plan for a person to die, your loved ones to die. You want to know that that person or those persons are with you all the time. But it is important because you know that death is inevitable. It is important to be educated on things or to have yourself, but some people don't even like the idea of even thinking or talking about death. But it is important that you be educated on, and on the constructs of death and the effects of death and how it impacts and so on. Long before you even have a death in your family, it would be good to know that in the now. In addition to that, so it's all about education. It's all about where you keep yourself, because as an individual, if you do not pay attention to what you import into your mind, if you find that you continue to listen to negative forms of music, if you start reading, align yourself with information that could easily depress you or is not uplifting, it is important that you associate with persons, with people, groups of persons. You keep your mind in the right place, because your mind is a very powerful thing, a very powerful source. And if you're not careful, I mean, I try my best not to get into that paradigm of yours and that kind of thing, because when you think about the paradigm, you want to know how you be. Why is it that you're behaving the same way that you're behaving at age 40? When you sit with a therapist, you get to realize that something that's triggered, something that happened from the time you were a little boy or a little girl, all those years ago, is still in your storehouse because it was never dealt with. May I submit to you, Mr. Christian man and Mr. Christian woman, the reason why you are having that struggle is because there is something in your paradigm that has never been dealt with. In spiritual terms, terminology, you may call it deliverance had been dealt with, have happened. It may be that, but it has never been treated. You went from relationship to relationship, but you were never counseled. You had an experience with your mother earlier, you had an experience with your father earlier, from the time you were 2, 3, 4, 5, and now you realize that at 40 years old, 50 years old, I'm having I'm having major outburst of some behaviors, but you don't even know the reason why you're behaving like that. And the therapist help you to retrace your steps historically and got to recognize, ouch, oh, this is what has been causing these problems. They dig into your storehouse, that paradigm. So you realize that even that's why the guarding of your mind is so important, because you don't want certain things to get into that paradigm of yours, because in there is that storeroom, and there is where it stores things for years. And mind you, when that garbage comes out, people will run at what they're hearing and what they're seeing coming out of you, whether you were saved all those years ago or not. Sometimes the pastor might want to know what's going on with you. You were such a beautiful child, but what happened that you're behaving like this? And you're now up for deliverance. So yeah, it is important to guard that mind, whether you are a Christian or not. Keep yourself in the Word of God. Keep yourself singing and listening to beautiful music and reading good scripture and that kind of thing. Those are critical things that you want to do. And more importantly, you want to keep yourself, without all the help of other persons. You must be responsible for ensuring of the things that you think, the thoughts that you import into your mind and into your
Yeah,
self-conscious.
I want to add here also, I know I kind of bleed in you a little bit, but you talk about understanding like your history, your past. I know in psychology you might call that psychoanalysis, you know,
Yeah.
doing the background check and looking at the person's history to see, what sort of vulnerability there were. And that is critical because we also want to say to people that this is not a situation where you're just vulnerable, but these are situations where you yourself would have created an environment, or maybe out of your domestic life, your familiar circumstances, that have really accumulated so much baggage that now added stresses that we are facing in our current times are a combination of both that collides like a hurricane, and of course, disaster takes place. So that is very critical in terms of what you're saying there, in terms of the history. And I want you to kind of dig in a little bit, and then you can go on the other point that you wanted to raise.
Very important, very important. And, I'm all for it. If we can stay on this topic, because this right there alone, a lot of information can be divulged there, and it can uncover a lot of information. So feel free to keep probing, Bishop, because, that's where you get the real meat of the matter. Because obviously, if I um, invited to speak on a topic, I don't know how long we will be on a particular, so I don't want to spend too much time on an issue. But once you probe, you encourage me then to hit home and to drill down on some things more. So that's good. And you can send in your questions as well, so that we can answer some of your personal questions that we are experiences, and that kind of thing. Oh yes, you want to go back into time. Many of us do not do self-evaluations. Many of us don't even reflect on what happened earlier in the day. We just go through life and that kind of thing. But it is always good to have self-evaluations, mental evaluations. Sometimes, I mean, whether you want to believe it or not, sometimes when you get home on evenings from the long day, it is important that you at least spend the first 30 minutes, if possible, if the kids or if the children would allow you to do so. If the but you want to spend that 30 or 40 minutes, even an hour if possible, maybe you're feeding some nice warm water as a therapeutic function, towel around your neck, drink some hot tea, and you relax for about 30 to 45 minutes before you go into the house and start dealing with stuff. Because the husband, the spouse may very well pass through the house and ask you something, not knowing that you had such a bad day, and because you have not zeroed on the workplace and the outer external forces from home, you bring all of that weight into the house, and before you know it, there's a problem. There's a challenge. So you want to make sure you owe it to yourself, owe it to your family, respect yourself and your family enough to be able to spend at least 30 minutes when you get in that house. Let your family know, I need, because of the strenuous responsibilities of my job, I need at least 30 minutes to. If you all have that conversation, you do it, it's going to happen. So that you can go back and reflect on what's happened today. You can begin to demyst, move sometimes and demystify some things that may have thoughts that you may have had during the day, meetings that you've had that you'll be harboring certain negative thoughts. You can remove those things from your thoughts. And you'll be surprised that you're going out to your little baby or the children, because understand that behavior, spirits can be transferred. And you just don't want to go in a home and transfer certain problems and spirits to the child that is in the house, the babies, the families that are there with you. Because the household obviously is not only made up of the biological persons, but obviously there might be other people that are living in the house with you and that kind of thing. So to make a long story short, you want to do your self-assessments and that kind of thing, 5, 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, drinking some tea, relaxing, and that kind of stuff. Then at least once every quarter, you want to do some evaluations of your life. People need to make this kind of quality assessments on their life to know where they are in their lives, to see what mistakes they're making. And once you continue to do that, you're going to find that a lot of things that you carry from your earlier years of life experiences, you're going to find that you can dismiss them a lot easier than when you allow them to just accumulate. Now, let me share a little secret with you. I have a vehicle, and for the because of COVID-19, the oil in the car wasn't driven a lot. The car wasn't driven a lot, so we felt that, you know what, I'm not going to service this car as regular as I would have serviced it when it used to be working almost every day. Would you know that although the car wasn't working that often, when 2 days ago, when we went to start the car wasn't starting. We called the mechanic and recognized that a little strainer that strains the oil to the engine was clogged because of the synthetic oil and thing that it used. What did I say? The car wasn't used as often, but we did not service it. And because of it not being serviced, it clogged the strainer. Translate that and transfer that now to what I'm saying to you. You have to come regularly, assess your life, assess yourself so that you can be in control, not really control, but you can manage your life and better medicine. So history, going back in history is very important. Knowing your history is very important because that would definitely help you. And a lot of Christians, because I'm on a Christian platform as well, a lot of Christians do not recognize. That's why it is so important. You know, the Bible says, we are supposed to renew our minds. We are supposed to renew our thinking. We are not supposed to conform to tradition and to conform to a lot of things that are custom, but renew yourself in daily thoughts, in daily thinking. Make sure that your emotions are thinking. This is God talking to us. And this is why it is so fundamental for you to go back into your history so that when you check on certain things, you can, and that is why it is important for you to be so close to your professionals. I always encourage persons to be close to their leaders so that you all will be open and have that intimate relationship in terms of being able to talk, because sometimes your leaders can see things about your life that you might not be able to see, but because you are a person so enclosed, you find there's a challenge for the leader to come to you. Of course, unless the leader is bold enough to bypass that. I get you, but definitely you want to be reassessing your history and digging on that, because too many people behave in a certain way and become depressed negatively and become depressed because of circumstances they encounter years ago that are still lodged in their subconscious, or what you call in their paradigm. And that is where, when God talks about renewing of your mind, he's really saying renew your paradigm. Renew that capacity in there that is capable of harboring or festing, these negative thoughts and causing you to think differently and behave differently.
Yeah, I just want to dig into this a little bit. You talk about transferring. Now, in our culture in Grenada, we've seen a lot of people, even in the Christian community, they come for deliverances, and there's a lot of spirits that are aligned to them. When they virtually have to be exercised of a lot of spirits that are transferred. While we understand that a lot of the things that happen in family are more like modeled, we develop them because we have been cultured in them, and not so much because they're DNA transferred. But I like the idea that you're talking about the spirits that are transferred through the behaviors. And that is critical for us to understand, because you'll find a lot of people on the altar for prayer, and not many people are there for the knowledge, right? Programs like these, you may not find a lot of people will sit and listen at the things that are liberating to them individually, where they can take control of their own lives if they, have these tips, and if they have these, these information that we're sharing here on this platform. But you'll see the deliverance services, they packed. You'll see the altars, they packed. You'll see people always gravitating to some kind of spiritual exorcist, you know, because they don't understand the power of the knowledge that are given to them, and these spirits are transferred. And a lot of people say, well, pastor, this you're not making sense here. This is nothing to do with transfer, because a lot of people, as you say, their lifestyle have drawn these negative spirits and images to their lives, and of course Satan will capitalize on that and cause them to self-destruct. So that is very critical. I want you to zoom in on that again, because this is a cultural thing. All right. We don't pay attention to what we do and how we develop our lives, and a combination of things that's happening in our domestic situations. And then we deal with a lot of the symptoms as pastors. We deal with the symptoms of having to exercise people, having to pray for them, having to bring them through this or that. And they don't even know how they got it in the first place.
Wow. Um, Beloved, it is always interesting to talk on, to speak on this topic, because usually the listening audience or the congregation don't usually understand what a leader might be saying to them when they talk about transference of spirits. The first thing that an individual would want to think is that the pastor or the leader of the church don't want me to visit other churches or to go to crusades. They want me to, all these kind of negative thoughts. But let me submit to you this evening, ladies and gentlemen, that it is important that you understand that transference of spirits is real and it is very serious. And while it may be okay to transfer good spirits, understand that it is deadly to have spirits, and very dangerous to be transferring or to have negative spirits, sinful spirits, uh, secular spirits transferred into your life. And I said secular because I know that while this might be a Christian platform, there are some persons who will be listening. There are a lot of unsaved people that listen to a lot of Christian programs and that kind of thing. But so that is critical because you see that thing I call laying on of hands, a very powerful means of transference of the anointing and the transference of power and deliverance and that kind of thing. Sometimes even that is very careful. And that's why, while it may be okay for some people to think that they can go to every crusade and they can go to every conference and every prayer, be in every prayer line, it can be a very dangerous thing, ladies and gentlemen, to do so. Number one, that's why it is so important again that it may be safer for you. Let your pastor, let your leader be that one to choose to sit, and not even sometimes they don't even have it all the answers, to sit with the person that they might be inviting to the church to be a part of the service to help you in your deliverance process. Because they may be able to find out from that person through assessment and evaluation and discernment if the leader that they are bringing to important or even inviting to the church, because I don't necessarily have to, important meaning from outside your walls. It could be your local country, or internationally. So that your leader maybe is mature enough to check, to recognize, and to self-assess if that person is fit to be brought to the church that they're leading. And so once they do that, then that leader may very well release that person then to be laying hands and so on you. But you don't want to have persons laying hands on you. I mean, whether you want to believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, the devil can be dressed as good as a priest. The devil can dress as beautiful as a pastor, an evangelist. You have to understand this is critical, and you don't want that. Transference of spirits is very real, and it can be very, very deadly, especially when they're not good, holy and clean spirits that are being transferred. I've known persons that were more messed up in their lives after they have attended crusades, after they have attended gone into prayer lines than they were before, and they wondered how,
Right.
because this is critical, very, very serious.
Yeah. And I also want to, while we're dealing on the transference in terms of deliverance, I'm talking more on the familial perspective from generation to generation. That kind of transfer I'm referring to in terms of, okay, my father was a drunkard, he
Yeah,
was an
talk to me.
alcoholic. My mother was a prostitute. Now, I am pregnant at age 12. That those kinds of spirit that I was referring to. I mean, of course, we know we have those on the platform as well, which is very dangerous. But we see people going in the platform because they don't understand that those spirits were transferred in families. And so a lot of times, you just want to be the passive person in the midst of your own deliverance. Somebody must come and do the work, and you're sitting there and you don't realize. Now I have to go back to my own history, and I have to evaluate what are the things that I've been involved in, what are the things that have been handed down to me, what are the things that I would have seen that my parents do that I copy, and now the same effect is happening to me. We see that with meals. We copy the same meals, so we get the same diabetic conditions, we get the same cancerous outcomes, and so on. So those familiar things, because we want people to be held accountable. We don't want to do the work. And so when we are messed up, somebody must now come and clean us up, and then we go back into the same environment that has the cycle repeating. So we want people to be aware that, what is it that I'm picking up? What is it that I am inheriting, transferred to me by my, mother, father, parents, whatever, in my space, that I have to be aware of and take control of.
I think you've said it. You've described it beautifully, though, because because definitely you have that. Those are very important things. The perspective is very important. Uh, Oftentimes, things like divorce. It can be divorce. It can be marriage. You'll find that in some families, you'll find that everybody seems to be, or the greater percentage of persons seem to be married through generations to generation. There's everybody always seems to get married. There's some who may get married at a very early age. You got in another family, you find this person's get married around age 25, age 22, early. These are traditional things that you'll find that can pass on from generation to generation. Similarly, divorce. You'll find that divorce is one of those things that people tend to be transferred a lot. You find that in this generation, you find that that family was divorced. Another one that is very good, very big. Mothers losing their first baby. You'll find quite often from four, five, six generations, if you go back, you will recognize, you want to know, why is it? How come I lost my first baby? And my sister lost her first baby. And then you check generations go back and you recognize that, each of them maybe had a stillborn, or they, had a miscarriage or something, or it always happened. And then those are the good things. Well, consider fear. Then you have the stealing and killing and all that kind of stuff. These are real serious issues that can move from one generation to another. Smoking, gambling. You find that there's somebody in the family, all these generations, that when you check this family is a very bright family. Everybody in here is so intelligent. They get 8 and 9 certificates of the education. When you trace back years ago with the generations, you find that they have somebody, the great grandfather and his ancestors is probably a head master. They were all teachers, came down in that family, and now you weren't just intelligent because you can. So yes, there are some good spirits and there are some bad ones, and you have to be the one to navigate and to learn, because that's where the responsibility falls. It falls on you. You'll find that you look back at some persons and recognize that they don't have a relationship with their children, and they want to know, why is it that every time or their brothers and sisters, the siblings, why is it I can't get to live? You realize that your previous generation, they used to live like what, some of the words, always fighting and killing, that kind of thing. It is hereditary. It can be transferable, and definitely you have to be on the watch for these things, very much so. Yeah.
All right, folks, if you're just joining with us, we're way into our discussion here with Dr. Anthony Cummins, all the way from Barbados, a psychologist, marriage counselor. I mean, he wears so many hats. I know I sometimes look at people like that are well decorated. I say, wow, they've been very busy in their young life, trying to self-educate and all of that, so that we can now be in a position to glean from them. Of course, you can call in, you can ask your questions, you can send your question via the WhatsApp. 403 1031 is the number to call. If you're outside of Grenada, of course, the code is 473, and we would like to hear from you. We would like you to, challenge the good doctor here of psychology. I'm sure by the grace of God, he will be able to answer your question. We're dealing with depression, and we're looking at some of the factors that affect. We have already delineated what is depression. We say it's a mood disorder, and he was just kind of breaking it down for us. Dr. Cummins, we know we're running out of time here, but we want to be able to give people, a little bit of the nuggets to take home. And how do we deal with this? We have been looking at how this thing filters through our mind. We know we have a personal responsibility to take control of what is happening and what's filtering through our mind, and really to bat against. We are cricketers in the Caribbean, so hold our crease when it comes to going to the boundary of depression. And so we want you to give us some little nitbits, tips, uh, principles that we can take home, that how do I, if I know I'm feeling this is not the way I normally feel, this is not my usual self, where do I take it from there?
All right. Let me quickly share with you a few things that you can look at quickly, and then I'm going to share with you. Feeling sad and having a depressed mood. That's one way of recognizing that you may be bordering or depressed. Loss of interest or pleasures in activities you used to enjoy. You once enjoy these activities, but you don't have that interest anymore. Changes in appetite. We may have, weight loss
I
or
think
gain.
we probably have a question, caller on the line.
Okay, take it.
Hello.
Caller, you there? Good evening.
Hi, good night.
Hi, good night.
Good evening.
Welcome to the
Good evening.
program.
Um, Thank you. I was wondering, I've seen people go into deliverances and listening, or are they okay, like we're on Zoom meetings and we're looking at the Zoom and people are getting deliverance. Does it happen like in the opposite way, that some people could be looking at stuff, like children looking at stuff, and they're putting in demons in their self? Is that possible?
All right, thank you for calling, Dr.
All right.
Cummins.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you for your question. Uh, Remember, I was a bit I was a bit modest when I said earlier, because I spoke through the lens of the psychologist when I made the statement that we have to, what we import into our rational or subconscious come through our senses. That was the statement basically from a psychological perspective and therapeutic perspective. But let me submit to you this evening that persons can also um, import those things through, as I said, watching television. So definitely you can import good or bad through those educational means. So why is it that this individual, and I don't know, normally we tend to go to this one quicker in terms of pornography. You have a lot of young persons today that that is into pornography and that kind of stuff. A lot of stuff is imported through the television, through the internet. Oh yeah, the internet, my god, that's a big one. Because oftentimes, whether you want to or not, sometimes you go on, Christian or not, you go onto the internet and somebody blasts this up in front of your face. You didn't ask for it, but it shoots up in your face. So if you are not careful and know how to deal with that, you may be enticed to watch it and look at it. And because it looks nice, you go back and watch it. And each time you're watching it, you're getting, it's like a grain of sand that is dropping on your table. You don't see the first grain, you don't see the second. But if sand continue to drop there, eventually you're going to have a pile of sand. So yes, in a quick answer, yes. So definitely transference can come through media and a myriad of different.
And this is a reality, Dr. Cummins, because during the COVID situation, we've seen that as
Oh
a
yeah,
major reality. Because I mean, now we're seeing the whole idea of the monkeypox coming out. They're starting with the media. They're starting to get the social
yes.
acceptance of it, just like they did. It's a pattern that they did in the COVID situation. So by
Wow.
the time it reaches our country, people are pliable to it. They accept it. They say, "Oh, this is some dreaded disease," and people are running
Come
helter
on now.
skelter,
Come on now.
because it starts at the media level. It starts of acceptance at the social level, news, and the things that we delineate as our educators, right?
Mm,
And then we are brainwashed into accepting some kind of man-made, some kind of laboratory, disease that
mm,
can't really happen naturally. And so people begin to panic. Or now people are panicking because they're hearing about the monkeypox. It's America is fighting it now. America is stealing, a whole lot. I don't know if they can have the fight, because already they're weakened from COVID. It's like an earthquake. They're weakened from COVID. Now it's the monkeypox. People are hearing that all over the news every time you come. I am telling you, there would be a lot of depression happen just by listening to the news.
Yes, definitely, definitely. There's, you got to keep on it, man, because that media, social media, internet. Wow, be very careful of this. At one time I told myself, you see me, I'm going to come off social media, you know. But every time I go, I need it more and more because people are calling for it, you know. All right.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. These are signs: loss of energy and increased fatigue. These are ways that you can find out, you know, if you're bordering or if you have forms of depression. Feeling worthless or guilty. Uh, Difficulty thinking or concentrating on making important decisions or any decisions at all. Thoughts of death and suicide. You know, this is critical, and the appetite. So, you know, but in order, what you want to do, if you find that you're having these symptoms lasting for like more 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or so, that would be a great sign, and how you can get around, diagnose that, or even, you know, and then you have, if it goes longer than that, and you find that, you know, it is affecting things like your thyroid glands and that kind of stuff, now it will be going into what we might be looking at: medical conditions of depression, and one might have to seek treatment, psychiatric treatment for some of this, prescribed treatment. Okay, so those are things that are very, very important to pay attention to. Now, there is something called a little acronym that I use. A lot of my clients would use, called My Peers. MYPEERS. MYPEERS. And the M really starts for finding meaning. Okay, and you're supposed to find small ways to be of service to others. So you got to live a life of a meaningful life. You got to start looking at meaningful things to do. So start finding small ways to be of service to others. Okay. Uh, the other one is, the Y would be for your goals. Right. It would be important to have workable goals that give you a sense of accomplishment. That's important. Something that you can control, something that is manageable, something that is realistic. Okay, and it's not for you, not for somebody else. You're doing this here for you. Um, Something that is measurable. You know whether or not it is done, or if it is getting done. So that's what the kind of goal that you want to set, because if it goes wrong, you want to be connected with it. Then you're looking at the P for pleasant events. So you want to schedule pleasant activities or events. You just don't want to wait for yourself to get into a mood, but you have to create moods for yourself. And therefore, you want to do a lot of this, because if you don't schedule events, you know, and it doesn't have to be too much, just be 30, 40 hours. Give yourself a vacation every day for about 30 minutes of of what you're doing, so that you can better cope with these things. Engagement, that's another one that is very important. You need to stay in the present. You're hearing a new word, well, not a new word, but a word that is randy about a lot now, something called mindfulness. You hear education officers and things talking about this a lot, mindfulness and that kind of stuff. And the church has really risen up heavy against it, you know, that kind of stuff, because they tend to associate it with different forms of occult practices and that kind of thing. But if I can say this in psychological terms, mindfulness is a very important area of meditation that you want to pay attention to. There's nothing really demonic about mindfulness. I didn't say go do yoga, and I'm not saying yoga is demonic on this platform. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying go do, you know, tai chi, and that kind of thing from. We call it, you know, I'm not saying to go and do these things. I'm saying that you need to get a form of mindfulness, and mindfulness is really about you staying in the present and not going back to looking at the things that occur in the past and staying there for too long. That's what you're calling mindfulness. Okay, that's very important. You want to look at exercise, and one of the E's, exercise, and E is for exercise, and it can also be for eating right, because two of those come together anyhow. You want to have a nice balanced diet. If you're there, you know what you tell me, you're just eating a lot of conkers and a lot of this and a lot of that, you know, junk foods, then understand that you're setting yourself for long-term forms of depression and that kind of thing. So you want to do some exercises, and exercises don't have to be 12 hours every day. You can do a little 15 to 20 minutes of exercise, whether you want to do high intensity exercise or just go for the walk and that kind of thing. Now, be careful of the me time though, because though me time is important, you need to have me time. You want to make sure that you're not isolating yourself too often, because that's where, quote unquote, and since we're on this platform, the devil really wants you to be in isolation so they can deal with you, when you're alone. That's where you find a lot of suicidal thoughts and thing comes in. Uh, then you want to look at sleep. Try to get regular sleep. Try and schedule your sleep pattern. You don't want to be sleeping up late at night for tonight, and then tomorrow you're sleeping all day and that kind of thing. No, you need to schedule your sleep patterns so that you know for sure that you are having a balance between in your sleep schedule, in your sleep, but you're getting in your sleep, getting a balance in your sleep, because this is critical. Not up today, down tomorrow. You want your body have to have that balance. I wish that one day there's so many topics that I'm hearing coming out here.
So going back to R. What's R? I think I missed R.
Relationships.
Right,
Focus
relationship.
on people who are people let's say, who lift you up. Yeah, I don't think I dealt with that. Focus on people who will lift you up. Sometimes we have a lot of people, and this is a critical part. It's very simple here, but you have to pay attention to this. Sometimes one of the reasons why we are so depressed is that you go through a situation, or you have a challenge that you're dealing with, and the person that you have closest to you, that you confide in, is so negative. It's so, I mean, when you think of it, they cannot offer you a proper suggestion. And you may come in contact with people that are helping you, are able to help you. And you go to the doctor give you medication, you come back home and share with that friend or that family, that person member, and the person tell you, you can take that medication, but they look so big and they look so ugly, and nothing the person can share of things. So you got to be careful of your relationships. Look for good relationships that can uplift you and relationships that can impact you. It is important that you frequent with others and that kind of thing, and be a part of groups. If you're a Christian, stick close to the church and your leaders and that kind of stuff. If you're not Christian and you don't have any respect for the church, and you're a part of a social group or that kind of thing, once it is the conversations and the encouragement is in there is good, then go for it.
Great, great. These are very good tip. I like that. My peers, and of course, if you miss those, the acronym there, the first one is meaning, your goals, pleasant event, engagement or exercise, in terms of exercise or eating right, relationship and sleep. Did I have it all right, Dr. Cummins?
Yes,
So
that's
these are
yeah.
good tips for us. I believe that they will really help us in going forward. We have to give it a wrap right now. Dr. Cummins, it has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, talking to you. We have not even scratched the surface tonight, but I believe if we take it in bite size, that people will assimilate, and that they will be able to have some understanding that will help them cope, because depression is a reality even in Grenada, even among Christians. So, Dr. Cummins, we'll give you a minute to give us your final wrap up closing comments. Of course, we really appreciate that you can take the time of your very busy schedule to really empower us in this wise here on the IPA Threshing Floor Helpline. So, Doctor, your last words.
Thank you so much. And again, I thank you for the invitation to come and share with you, sit with you, and to learn from you as well. And to be a part of the audience there in Grenada, Petit Martinique, and Carriacou. God bless all of you. Continue to enjoy yourselves. Blessing to the Threshing Floor committee and all of you that are part of that, even Hope radio station. God bless you all. My prayer for you right now is
Yes.
prosperity, and
Yes.
to go from strength to strength in your ministry as well as your personal lives. Everyone, and all of you. Depression is real. Cast all your cares upon Him. God is listening. God is waiting. Trust Him. Prayer and supplication, make it known unto God. Thank you so much from Barbados. Blessings.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for this last hour. I believe that, it is very critical in your resolve to maintain your mental wellness, in your resolve to live your highest potential. And we here at the International Pentecostal Assembly, we call it IPA Threshing Flow Helpline. We're here every other Thursday for you. Join us here on the Hope 103 FM family. And of course, you continue to listen to the Hope 103.1 FM. They bring you inspirational talks, what have you. There's a whole wealth of things here that are available to us. So we don't have to listen to the baggage. We don't have to listen to the sad news. We don't have to listen to the things that are going to cause us to be depressed. And we thank God that we have been joined here by this goodly psychologist, a Christian, and many mayors, marriage counselor, so many other things that you're taking the time here to really feed and nourish us with this good information. Again, we want to say thank you. We reach out to our IPA family, all of our churches here on the island. We're getting ready for our convention 2022. So we are looking forward to a great time. We have the Aptitude Pentecostal Lighthouse. They're going to be having the anniversary celebration at the end of this year. This month, as a matter of fact, sorry. So we want you to gear up for that. It's going to be 3 years establishing on the Pastor Roots Ministries. She's always here with us on the Threshing Flow Helpline. So again, we look forward to you joining us for another edition as God give us the grace and strength. Continue to allow the grace of God to come into your sphere of influence. And should you need help, don't be afraid to reach out so that you can get the support that you need. God bless you to all those that have joined us on the live. We appreciate you and we send a shout out to you right there. We're saying, Grenada, big up yourself. And so we thank you for joining and taking the time with us. God bless you so tremendously. And we're looking forward to seeing you again. God bless.
God bless.